The Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to John. Jesus said, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand, who is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and runs away, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. The hired hand runs away because a hired hand does not care for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that do not belong to this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock, one shepherd. For this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life in order to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it up again. I have received this command from my Father. The Gospel of the Lord. So 2 students were taking a speech class, and their assignment was to recite the 23rd Psalm, which we just did a few moments ago. Now, the first student planned to be an actor. He recited the psalm dramatically and eloquently. When he finished, his classmates rose to their feet with appreciative applause, giving him a standing ovation. Then it was the second student's turn. His voice was anything but dramatic, and his presentation far from polished. When he finished, there was no applause, nor was there a dry eye in the room. What was the difference between the 2 presentations? The instructor asked the class. The first student raised his hand. The difference is, he said, I know the psalm, but he knows the Good Shepherd. Today is Good Shepherd Sunday. We hear echoes of this theme throughout all of our readings. Jesus, the Good Shepherd, who lays down his life for his sheep. The one who knows his sheep by name and leads them beside the still waters. Jesus uses this image to try to convey a kind of new math, the depth of a relationship that just doesn't add up for most of us who are sheep. And even all these thousands of years later, this image of sheep still resonates with us. And even in Palestine today, it is still possible to witness a scene that Jesus and those he was speaking to almost certainly saw 2,000 years ago. That of Bedouin shepherds bringing their flocks home from various pastures where they had grazed during the day. Even today, as then, their flocks often will end up around the same watering hole around dusk. So the sheep all get mixed in together, 8 or 9 flocks adding up to a whole huge convention of thirsty sheep. But their shepherds do not worry about the mix-up. When it is time to go home, each one issues his or her own distinctive call, a special trill or whistle, or a particular tune on a particular reed pipe, and that shepherd's sheep withdraw from the crowd to follow their shepherd home. They know whom they belong to. They know their shepherd's voice, and it is the only one they will follow. But this whole image of Jesus as a very good shepherd still just doesn't seem to add up somehow. It's a bit like those brain teasers, you know? How many sheep can a hungry wolf eat on an empty stomach? Anyone guess? Right, 1. Because once he eats one, his stomach isn't empty anymore, right? I'm making a silly joke, of course, but why does the shepherd lay down his life for the one sheep? He can just as easily escape with the 99 others, while the wolf is busy with the one who kept getting lost anyway. Why not just cut your losses and get out while the getting is good? By all outward appearances, it does seem to be the smartest move. It makes the most logical sense. But we all know that relationships and love defy logic. It is about being bound to something beyond ourselves, about identifying with it so strongly that it becomes part of us. And when threatened, we defend it as if we are defending our own bodies. And sometimes that can get us into trouble. I remember picking up Lynn, a good friend of mine, at LAX a few years ago. Now, if you're anything like me, you'd rather go any place else on the planet than LAX. Now, we got Lynn's luggage into the car, and when I opened the door to get into the driver's side, my door accidentally touched the side of the car that had pulled up alongside of us. There was no harm done, but the owner of the other car jumped out and yelled, "Just what the hell do you think you're doing?" Before I could say anything, Lynn jumped out of the passenger seat and yelled right back, "Don't you talk to her like that," she yelled at him. "It was just an accident, for God's sake. She didn't mean it. That's why they call it an accident." Well, the man was a little bit taken aback, but he was still furious, and he said to her, "I'm not talking to you." And she said, "Yeah, well, guess what? When you're talking to her, you're talking to me." And the man backed down. Being the good shepherd for us is a little bit like that. Being willing to risk our own safety in order to protect someone else's, not because he or she cannot take care of themselves, but because you care about them. You are connected to him or her, and you know it. Jesus himself reminds us also this day that there are other sheep that belong to the shepherd, sheep not of this fold. And this is where sheep math begins to differ from shepherd math, from good shepherd math. Sheep can't figure it out how good shepherds love that other flock as much as they love this one. It just doesn't match up with our calculations. Sheep math cannot figure out how the good shepherd loves me as much as he loves you, or that he loves both of us 100%. Sheep math does not compute because we can't figure out how the shepherd could love us all of the time when we are angry or lost or confused, or when we ignore his voice and stray from the still waters. And here's where I think listening to someone like Karen Armstrong can help us figure out Jesus' style of math. You may have read her book titled A History of God. It was published in 1993 and is an international bestseller. And if you haven't read it, perhaps we can read it together as a book group. I'd love to do that. Anyway, in 2008, Armstrong won the Technology, Entertainment, and Design Award, the TED Award, which provides $100,000 for the purpose of disseminating ideas worth spreading. Disseminating ideas worth spreading. Now, Armstrong is a British nun, and she contemplated ideas to spread. And what welled up in her heart as she studied the world's religions was a common thread that ran through them all. And in 2009, she unveiled what she calls the Charter for Compassion. The Charter for Compassion. She has also launched a campaign for compassion, calling upon every community throughout the world to affirm the Charter and to become a partner. The Charter is based on the principle of compassion that is at the heart of all religions, the ethic of the golden rule that Jesus endorsed, that we all have learned throughout our lives, and that calls upon us always to treat others as we wish to be treated ourselves. Armstrong said that there are many differences in religions, but the concept of compassion is found in every single one. She said that compassion impels us and compels us to work tirelessly to alleviate the suffering of our fellow creatures, to dethrone ourselves from the center of our world and to put someone else there. Dethrone ourselves from the center of our lives and to put someone else there, and to honor the inviolable sanctity of every single human being, treating everybody without exception with absolute justice, equity, and respect. These are not just sentimental words. Following the golden rule has always been dangerous. Followers of it have been killed for their following. Churches have been picketed by hate groups because of it. Nor is compassion easy or popular. Would it surprise you to know that none of our local communities have signed on to the campaign for compassion? None of them. Not Laguna Hills, Laguna Woods, not Laguna Beach, or Irvine, or Mission Viejo, or Lake Forest, or any others in close proximity to St. George's. And I know because I checked. Would it surprise you that there are many in our communities who have experienced Christianity as hostile, pompous, judgmental, and disdainful of others? But that exclusive approach to the Christian faith stands in direct contradiction to what Jesus himself says. I have other sheep that do not belong to this fold, he tells us, and I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock and one shepherd. So often, it's so hard to know exactly what Jesus means. In today's gospel, he has just healed the man born blind, and he made the religious authorities angry because he did it on the Sabbath day. They are challenging him to declare himself the Christ so that they can accuse him of blasphemy, and he refuses to give them what they want. Sometimes it is hard for us to know exactly what it is that we believe. Our belief tends to show up in our actions more than our words. Sometimes even we have to look at what we do in order to understand what we believe. But I think what Jesus is saying to us is that if we love him, we will make compassion our ethic, inclusive of everyone, and difficult though that may be for us sometimes. Because Jesus doesn't say that we are in or out of the flock depending on our ability to believe. What he says is that our ability to believe depends on where we place ourselves, whether we place ourselves in or out of the flock. It's a bit like praying to get into God's presence versus getting into God's presence and then praying. Because we are not at heart believers in an institution or even an ideology, but we are believers in a relationship that changes from day to day and from year to year. Some days we are as firm in our faith as the apostles, and other days, we are like lost sheep, which means that we belong to the flock, not because we are certain of God, but because God is certain of us, and no one is able to snatch us out of God's hands. And if we have trouble sometimes hearing God's voice, hearing the shepherd's voice, it's okay. It is not a voice that always speaks in words, much less complete sentences. But it can usually be heard sometime between our getting up and our lying down each day, leading us beside still waters, restoring our soul. A voice that is always speaking to us, always speaking love to us, a voice reminding us to be like Jesus, to be compassionate.